Hey guys, this is Shadowq, and today I'm reviewing the 3.8 Perfect Storm patch notes. Currently on PTS, should be released by tomorrow, I think. And there's actually a really big set of patch notes because the first and most important change in here is the Conquest map change. I'm going to go through it, I'm going to read it all, and then I'll give my thoughts. So, Conquest map change. We're making a number of changes to Conquest this patch based on feedback we've received since the start of Season 3. While overall the Season 3 meta changes have been very successful, Conquest in particular has lost some enjoyment, especially in the jungling role. We want to empower junglers once more and let them spend more time roaming the jungle. The biggest change is the... hold on. The biggest change is the return of speed buff from Season 2. The return of speed buff will allow junglers to roam more easily and disrupt multiple lanes. We took a lot of feedback on this issue before making the decision to bring it back, but at the end of the day we think the game will be more enjoyable with junglers having a dedicated buff again, and that was mirrored in the responses we received from the community. The relocation of back harpies will help to solve some of the issues of the jungle being too accessible at all times. The map will also see some improvements to quality of life with changes to the boars and fire elementals. Overall, these changes should lead to junglers being able to make more interesting decisions, feel more relevant in all lanes, and have more dedicated sources of farm for them to stay relevant as an individual role. Here are the exact changes that they did. The Conquest jungle is seeing a few adjustments, added the speed camp back into the jungle. It's where the mana was. They removed the short lane boar camp, and they moved the mana camp to where the short lane boar camp was. And they increased the boar experience from 83 to 105, increased boar gold from 29 to 50. Fire lilies give 45 experience and 30 each in our single camp. Move the back harpy camp to its original Season 2 location. Back harpy respawn timer adjusted from 110 seconds to 80 seconds. Boar respawn timer adjusted from 110 seconds to 180 seconds. Okay. So, that's a lot to process. I actually waited to make this video until I had some experience on the PTS. I've scrimmed a whole bunch on there. I've played at least a couple casual games on there as well, and I actually think I can give my valid opinion now. So basically, one of the biggest complaints that people had about the jungle and why this change happened is because of the general thought process that people had that the jungler wasn't really an individual role, as Hi-Rez repeated in their explanation behind the changes. And basically what it consisted of is you went to mid lane, then you went to a camp with your mid laner, and you were basically doing the same role as your mid laner, right? Like, you could gank sometimes, but all in all, you were basically a sharing experience machine. And you would go to mid, go to buff, go to mid, go to buff, go to mid, go to buff, and like you'd always be sharing with somebody, and you couldn't really feel like an individual role. And I don't think these changes fix that in the slightest. In fact, they actually punish it more for not doing that. So if the goal was to make the jungle feel like an individual role, this has failed intensely. And that's because of how Bumba's Mask works and how experience sharing works. If you don't know why you did this before and why you still continue to do this, it's because first off, Bumba's Mask gives you gold as if you were doing the camp alone, so it's very efficient to share with somebody else. And additionally, how experience sharing works in Smite is that when two people do like a wave or something, you get 1/3 bonus experience total. So like each player gets two-thirds of the experience that you would get as one person, which means that you get bonus experience. And those efficiencies together, combined with like how fast you can get back to mid without losing too much pressure, especially if you do have pressure you can invade or something like that, that's why you share. With camps being worth even more than they were before, this is now punishing to players who don't know that that's how the game works, which is like basically everyone below, like, I don't know, platinum or something, or in platinum. I don't even know the cutoff for when people actually start to do this, but people still don't do this in the rank games I'm in, so it's not like a super common thing that people apparently know, or if they do, they're not using it very effectively. But the biggest complaint that people had about the jungle is that you had a secondary mid laner, and this makes that more of a problem by a lot. This does not accomplish that goal in the slightest, and it's really weird that they do that to try to fix that as a problem. If you did want to fix that as a problem, though, there are a couple ways to do it. You could reduce the amount of experience that you get for when you share a wave or something like that, which would honestly punish dual lane, and you'd have to do some other balancing changes around that, and that's kind of a band-aid fix, honestly. Or you can make doing the jungle take longer, but give you more reward, so that way you basically don't care that you're getting 1/3 bonus experience for sharing, because there's just that much more stuff to do. And that is the only thing about these changes that they kind of helped a little bit, because doing one boar is a lot faster than being able to do an entire buff camp, which is basically the difference between this map and the last. But it's kind of mitigated by the fact that the back harpies are going to take longer to go to, so like the jungler doesn't really have that much more farm. And usually the only boar camp on the map that exists still, I think, is on the dual lane side of the map. So you're giving the ADCs more farm, not really the jungler. Obviously, they do share them sometimes, and that's a common invade spot, but still, it's not really too much more farm going to the junglers. Also, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, another way to actually make junglers be able to go places on their own. Like you have to give them more experience and more gold in the jungle, and make it take longer to do. Because if it doesn't take longer to do, you'll do the exact same thing like I described. You'll share all the camps with your mid laner, and it won't make a difference because unless you actually increase the time, which they actually did do by adding another buff camp to the map, which is the blue buff or the speed buff versus a single boar. That is a plus thing. That is one thing out of all this changes that will actually make the jungler be able to farm on their own a little bit more. Um, but like you have to make the jungle take longer to do and give more experience. And this only makes the jungle take like a little teensy tiny longer to do. Except then they also went and increased the respawn time of back harpies or of boars. So I don't know. It's really awkward. I think. Like sure the back harpies respawn faster, but they're so much further away now. So I don't think this change accomplishes anything that they wanted it to. However, these changes are actually really good. I kind of like how the experience felt, and that stuff gave more, and like invading is more punishing now to the enemy team, and like it actually incentivizes invading and stuff, which it increases more action. So I think these changes are actually really good. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they accomplished what they thought they were going to accomplish. Uh, so I'm bashing the whole thing, but it's good changes. They just didn't do what they thought they were going to do at all. Uh, like they're giving the community an apple, but it's an orange, but the oranges are still good. So uh, anyway, um, let's go on another side rant now. Let's talk about speed buff. Um, I am very, very, very much against them adding speed buff back into the game. I like the idea of the jungler having a dedicated buff, and it's a really good thing for the game. And it's just speed buff is not the one that they should have added back. Or if they do, it should be strictly out of combat or something. There are a lot of ways to balance speed buff, but in its current state, speed buff is insanely overpowered and makes fights snowball more than any other buff by a lot. And basically that is because, like, if somebody is out of position by a little bit, and the jungler has a speed buff, like you can actually just get mowed down if you're like trying to ward alone as a support or just like a little bit overextended trying to ward as a mid laner, and you can just kind of get screwed by a jungler that has speed buff out of like not seeing them. And no other buff in the game can do that. Like if a jungler had red and tried to go on a mid laner, you can actually just outrun it. But the speed buff gives you so many more auto attacks over and over and over and over again that like no other buff could give you that amount of increased damage. It's insane how good speed buff is in combat. Um, it's also like kind of absurd how much chase down potential that junglers have in a fight too. Like let's say you're in the middle of a team fight and one of your teammates dies. Usually you'd still be able to fight and like some people can still get out, but if the jungler has a speed buff in that fight and you lose by a little bit, it snowballs the fight more than any other buff by far because again, the speed buff lets you mow down your enemy or like your friendly teammates. Like if the enemy jungler has speed and you're losing a fight, you guys get this fight like snowball the heck out of it because then the jungler just chases you down and stuff. So I'm super, super against having speed buff in the game. I just don't think it's good for the game at all. It snowballs fights. It makes it harder to play around ganks in a dumb way. Like, you have to play, like, literally 20 feet more back than you would on average because of speed buff. But if somebody has red, which is 20% more power and a flat increase, which is, like, actually an insane buff, you can still play around it, but just by, like, standing a foot extra back or just, like, a little bit or playing around, like, their damage that they could do. But speed buff is just so difficult to play around, man. And in its current state, it's just kind of ruining team fights and like ganks and stuff like that. Um, that being said, the jungler being able to roam with a speed buff is kind of a convenient thing. So my proposition to speed buff is to give it a honestly 10% is even too high for combat. Give it like a 5% increased movement speed to combat, and just leave it as the 20% that it is in or outside of combat because that's not nearly as important as in combat. It just kind of ruins team fights, and it's just a way to get cheesy snowballing advantages in a casual scenario that shouldn't exist in the game, even in the slightest. So I'm super against speed buff. It shouldn't be in the game. If it is in the game, make it basically strictly out of combat or something, or but buff the damage on it or something. Buff the attack speed. I don't really care. Just don't give the movement speed in combat. That's just a way to get cheesy kills in the game. I am just super against speed buff in every way. Um, that being said, as far as being able to gank and stuff, it does help, but in a cheesy way, so I don't think that's the way to do it. I think it's a band-aid fix to the problem that people think that they are having, which honestly isn't even a problem. So those are my thoughts on changes. I know that's a big portion of the video, but that's like a obviously huge changes to this patch. So um, all in all, changes are good except for the speed buff being added. Like more farm in the jungle is, or like more buffs to do in the jungle for the amount of experience is good. Doesn't accomplish anything that they were trying to accomplish. Um, Having another buff in the game is good. It adds diversity and also more stuff to invade and stuff like that. The buff, however, being speed buff is bad. Those are my thoughts on that. Um, Looks like all the miscellaneous is just bug fixes, going down to actual balance changes. Item changes, Bloodforge. Increased cost. Basically, this says it's changing completely. Increased cost from 2200 to 2800. Increased power from 40 to 75. New passive: killing an enemy god forges a shield from their blood with health equal to 200 plus 10 per player level for 20 seconds. While the blood shield is active, you gain 20% bonus movement speed. So, if you're not taking damage and you get a kill, this is a 20% bonus movement speed buff for 20 seconds. Uh, Again, I'm not a fan of stuff that snowballs fights. Going back to the speed buff thing, I'm against any Fatalis effect in the game. I'm against Fatalis. I'm against Chronos too. Like I don't know, all that's really really cheesy, but that's not really the point here. Items that snowball fights, I'm really against because it just ruins the casual ranked experience. If one person is slightly better than the other team, then they get a huge advantage compared to what they should be getting from like an otherwise normal scenario. So I hate items like this being in the game. I think it's really really dumb that stuff like this exists. Evaluating its power, on a side note though, is really difficult. It has a lot of power for the cost, and the passive will only really be useful on maybe like characters like Thanatos, Kali, and Alquang. Or I guess not Alquang, but like characters who are going to get the kills. Like maybe I don't even know. It's really tough to evaluate who this could even go on, but I think it's going to be too weak to see too much play unless it's on those niche characters I listed, like Kali or Thanatos or something like that. Um, it could be really strong on Kali actually. Who knows? Uh, Gem of Isolation, price decreased by 150. Really good. I like this change a lot. Good job, high res. Gem of Isolation was just a bit underpowered, and it also had a niche unique effect. I liked it. So, sure, I like it being in the game. Golden Bow. Increased power from 40 to 55. Reduced cost from 2380 to 2330. Um, the reason that they're doing this change, and it seems a little bit weird, but basically rank 2 of the item has a passive on it. And because of that, it accomplishes everything that you need it to. So the passive splash from Golden Bow is actually completely irrelevant. Like, you're not buying Golden Bow for the splash damage, because rank 2 already accomplishes all the splash that you need. Like, and any more is like overkill, because it's mostly for lane push and buff clear. And you don't need more than rank 2 has already. It's really silly that you would. So this change basically accounts for that. It makes it so that way Golden Bow can actually be finished without it being a terrible item, and this probably isn't even too much overkill. This is probably the numbers that it needs to be at, so maybe you'll actually see it upgraded now if you start it on an ADC, and it also gives a little bit more viability to characters like Mercury or something like that. So, I like the change. It makes the item actually viable. Good change. Heartward Amulet increased magic prop from 40 to 45. Sure, it's so small. I don't know. I guess it's as small as the Gem of Isolation change, but I don't think it really needed a buff. It probably was seeing underperformance in casual since it's like a harder item to use since it's like not a self-defensey. So if they're gonna buff it, that's the right way to do it. I like it. Hide of the Nemean Lion, fixed tooltip. Okay, so it's just a bug. Okay. Bug fix. Wait, it was actually always physical. What the heck? That's weird. Anyway. Fixed an issue where all player deployables were programmable renewal, so it's bug fix. Rod of Asclepius, just receiving 2 noticeable increases this patch. Rod of Healing, the item it builds from, is receiving a weaker version of the aura, and then it's also receiving buffs. So increased health by 50 and increased aura to 25, and then the rank 2 of the item has a 10% aura. This item will still be gotten in the exact same amount of scenarios. It's not really too useful, but it's also not awful. So this change is fine. It was a bit underpowered before, so this probably puts it in a better spot. Also makes it like more power spiky for getting rank 2, which is really important for the item. So good change. Doesn't really change too much though. This won't see too much play. Runic Shield, reduced cost by 100. Sure, didn't really see too much play. It's fair. It needed it. I agree. You actually might get the item now on like solos. I don't really see it on too many other roles though. It's pretty rare that you need a attack speed reduction and magic prot, but it's not bad. I don't really see this being built into support. It's really inefficient, just like Witchblade. Maybe in a niche scenario where they have like Chronos and Soul or something. But again, it's just kind of a weaker item because it has no health on it, and I don't know, maybe on a Soul laner. Spectral Armor added an effect for when the passive is active. Sure. Stone of Gaia increased MP5 to 10 to 15. Changes nothing. Kind of a convenience thing. I guess it's better for quality of life since it's supposed to be a regen item and it makes it fill that niche a little bit more. But still gotten in the exact same amount of scenarios. This is a super, super, super small buff. Wind Demon, your crits increase your attack speed, movement speed. Oh, that's removing the old passive. Okay, okay. Anti-alien crit was simply not exciting for players who wanted to prioritize crit. Okay. Your crits increase your attack speed and movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds. That's insane! This item's insane now! The bigger part of this is obviously the movement speed, because that lets you go in and get out more, but, I mean, the attack speed's not negligible either. That's a pretty cool passive. This will probably see play. It's really hard to evaluate exactly how good it is, but that seems insane to me. The reason that this wouldn't see that much play, though, is because crit might not just be good enough to build it efficiently, but this item is like a reason to go a crit build. I think this item is insanely strong. I don't know. Having that extra bonus is really, really big. I don't know. That's crazy. I think this item will actually see play. If a crit build's a thing, this will be in the crit build. Like, hands down. The movement speed's insane. I wonder about assassins like Sir Naja or something. That's really interesting, too. I wonder how good it'll be on them. It's probably even better on them than it is on ADCs. That's really curious. That's cool. I like the item. It's a cool change. Much more unique. Witchblade reduced cost from 2200 to 2050. Sure, it needed a buff. It was kind of underpowered. It's fine, though. You actually might get this a little bit more on support. It's not a negligible buff. It's cool. It's actually not terrible anymore. It is pretty small, but I mean a 10%-ish price nerf is not nothing. It'll probably won't see too much play on support still, but maybe in niche cases like when they have so many physical or their magic characters are not useful or something. I don't know. Artemis bug fix, Chalk. Excuse me, guys. Increase slow from 15% scaling to 35 to like 5% at all ranks, basically. Okay, sure. Stormcall, increase base damage by 50. Okay, so Chuck's still the worst warrior in the game. Small buffs like this though are fine. He's always been a lane bully. Maybe a team in the SPL can actually abuse it and get value out of it, I guess. But all in all, this it seems like an insignificant change. I don't think he'll see any play. Whoa, this is actually huge. Let me read the reasoning behind this. Freya is receiving a very focused change that is both a buff and quality of life improvement. By increasing the pulse duration by 1 second, we ensure that Freya will never have leftover irradiate time. Okay, this change is really, really curious. Freya's weakness was always the downtime that she had from her moves, and being able to go on Freya when she couldn't like do insane amount of damage is like her weakness, and this mitigates her weakness immensely. Freya's been seen in like the ADC roles before. I don't think she'll see jungle playing after this, but maybe a team will make her work ADC or something like that. This change is not small. This is a really big change actually. I know it's 1 second, but it probably won't be enough to make Freya see play, and she'll still probably be really bad because she just doesn't have as much value as a character like Kronos or something like that. But this change, like, this shouldn't be underrated. This is a really big deal. Percentage uptime of Pulse is really, really high now. So we'll see how good this pans out. I don't think she'll be good after this still, but it's an insanely big buff. It gives her better clearing lane. It makes her harder to go on. It increases her overall damage output, and that's like Freya's strength too. It buffs her strength and mitigates her weakness. That's insane. So it's not a small change, but she'll probably not be good after this. It's really hard to evaluate though. Cool though. Kukulkan fixed an issue where Kukulkan's passive wouldn't knock him out of, so bug fix, sure. Nemesis. Okay. Nemesis excels at late game as a late game executor, focused on shredding assassins and tanks alike. We feel like she currently does well in this role, but her early game is too punishing to allow her to reach this point of the game. Increasing her passive as well as allowing Divine Judgment to steal 50% protections at all ranks should give Nemesis more potency in the early stages of the game, while still keeping her the late game focused assassin that she currently is. The change is increased power, gain and power loss by 2% per hit, and increase the prot steal from 30 scaling to 50 at all ranks. This won't really buff Nemesis too much. This buff isn't nearly as much as this. The 20% early game is kind of a big deal, I guess. I I think Nem will still be picked exactly as much. I don't think this is a big enough buff to make her see play. It's pretty small. Moving on. Raijin. Raijin is seeing a mixture of quality of life improvements and small positive adjustments. We've fixed an issue with Percussive Storm being improperly silenced and interrupted, while also making it more usable and reliable for Raijin. Raijin will no longer be interrupted out of his Thunder Crash if hit with a hard CC after he's become invisible. Finally, Taiko drums will now allow for more time to make smart decisions and should feel less restrictive. Raijin has been performing under the curve, and we feel like these changes will put him in a better place without directly increasing his burst potential. So this is a really big buff for Raijin. Basically, they increased the projectile speed of his one to by 15%, um, and fixed the silence bug. That's a bug. Um, they made his 3 not interruptible, which is a big deal since that's his jump, and that's crazy. I can talk about that in a sec. But the final change is time in the air increased from 3 to 4.5, reduced mobility from 75 to 40. So this is more or less a quality of life because you had 3 seconds. You like had to fire them directly one after another. So like that's a quality of life thing. That should have been how he always was. But Raijin was like one of the most overrated gods in the game when he came out. He wound up being really bad once people figured it out. But these changes are insane. Like this is kind of nice. This is actually kind of a big deal because it was hard to hit this before. It wasn't as good as like an Isis one like people thought. But this is the biggest change that he got by far. Basically, Raijin's weakness was like as soon as he did his 3 to jump away, then you CC'd him, and then he died because he can't jump. It's like trying to CC an Athena getting their dash off, basically, because it has such a long cast time. You can just interrupt it over and over and over again, and that was Raijin's like biggest weakness. That combined with like the alt buff and the 1 buff will probably make Raijin see like play as a top mage. Um, like he was really overrated when he came out, and then it wound up being really bad, and then seeing no play. And now these buffs make Raijin probably top tier mage again. That's a huge change. I'm looking forward to see Raijin being played. I like the character. Really well designed, really cool kit. And this fixes like oh, what the heck? I clicked on the symbol. It just took me to the symbol. Oops. Yeah, but this probably makes Raijin like top tier mage again. That's insane. That's a huge buff. Um, who knows? Maybe it'll be the same thing that happened when Raijin came out, and it'll still be bad. But like his biggest weakness was that his 3 could be interrupted, and now it can't anymore, which is insane. So Raijin's probably top tier again. It's really hard to tell though. He might wind up still being only okay, but I think all the buffs together should probably make him like pickable and not like maybe not top tier like super S priority, but like he'll be probably one of the better mages. And I think he'll see play after this at the very least. He'll see some play in the SPL. Mystic Rush increased radius from 12 to 15. I don't even know what button that is, man. I guess this is 1. It has to be, right? Let's go to Smite Fire. I don't even know, man, what the abilities are called. I'm not a role player. Ravana. Oh, that's his alt. Okay. So alt radius increased. Sure. It was a bit small before. Scotty, Rune of the Hunt, decreased Calder's basic attack damage from 60 to scaling to 100, to 50 scaling to 90. Sure, it's really hard for me to evaluate how well Scotty's done. It seems like she's bad, and this is a nerf, so I don't know what to think of that. But she's probably OP in casuals because killing a dog is like, a tough thing for people to do somehow. So I guess it's warranted. I don't know. It's so tough to tell. Scotty's actually seen a lot of play in EU, or at least the first week or so. So she's not completely awful, but she's probably not OP. She's probably like balanced. I don't know why they'd nerf her. Maybe she's just... I don't know. That's really weird. Whatever. Moving on. Vimana, a bit of give and take on Vimana. We're decreasing the scaling on Armored Umbrella, increasing the scaling on Umbrella Ring. Vimana has many strengths from his ability to dish out damage, control a fight, and sustain in his ultimate. The shift is to better balance the damage across all of his abilities. Armored Umbrella reduced physical power scaling to 70%. Umbrella increased the physical power scaling to 50%. Literally the most random change I think I've seen in a while. I feel like this is literally random. He's in the exact spot he was before. I guess it makes it more balanced. It's more of a quality. Like I guess they said it was a quality of life fix more than anything, but doesn't change balance. He's in the exact spot he was before. But I guess they wanted to balance his kit to not be like lopsided. I guess it's good, but it doesn't change balance at all. Xing 10. is seeing the balance of his kit shifted around, but we overall wanted to bring him up in strength by making his ultimate more well-defined for enemy players to play around. We felt comfortable bringing back some of the strength of his main abilities. Furious Roar's damage now happens to be over a longer period, but will end up stronger in the end. And Hook Slam's root has been brought back, allowing Xing 10 more control over enemies in a fight. Okay, so Furious Roar, increased duration to 4 seconds, or 1 scaling to 4, which only matters once it's at rank, I guess rank 3 is the first time it matters, right? Which is pretty early in the game. Decrease dot damage by 1% per tick, but you get a bonus tick. So before it was 3 times 3 ticks, right? Maybe it ticks 4 times, I'm not sure. Probably not. So before it did 9%, and now it does, before it did 12%, and now it does 12%, right? Is that right? Okay. Uh, Increased base damage. I mean, I guess that keeps the attack speed slow on them longer and whatever, but it's so small. Increased base damage by basically 0, sure. His 2 now roots again, that's a gigantic deal. And his ult, I can't scroll down anymore, but increase the casting time from 0.72 to 1.25, huge nerf. There's a new animation for casting his ultimate. This ability, I know you guys can't see this right now, but maybe I can fix it. Hey, there we go. The ability now deals 25 scaling to 105, plus 30%, 5% per hook, rotation, and throw. I wish I could see how much it did before. I can't tell if that's more damage, but that's gotta be an nerf on his ult. Like, that might make him unplayable, man. I don't know. That's huge. Did he get nerfed this patch? Did Xing the unplayable god get nerfed? I don't know. Probably not, since this is like a huge deal. All in all, Xing might see play, but because his ultimate was nerfed to the ground, he probably won't really see play. Usually if they get stuck in the ult, they're dead no matter what anyway. So if that's more damage, it's probably not too much. Maybe it's a huge increase. Maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know. But Xing got nerfed, I guess. Did he get nerfed? Maybe. Maybe this is enough to compensate for the unplayability of his ult. Do you even rank up the ult anymore? I don't know. I guess you do, but that's so bad. That's so incredibly bad. Over a second wind-up time, like the 0.7 seconds wasn't even good. Like it made it like borderline impossible to get value out of. I don't know. uh, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a buff though. Like this is a huge deal. It's definitely a buff. I don't think I'll see too much play after this. That's really hard to tell. It's like really hard to tell. Maybe this is enough just to make him see play. Uh, I don't think it'll be enough though. Maybe. If he sees play, he probably won't be top tier. Okay, that's all the notes for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to my rant, especially about the Conquest map changes. I know that was a lot, but that was, I guess, most of the patch, honestly. So thank you for listening to that. Really appreciate it. If you like, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day, guys.